students, welcome back. I know we're nearing the end of the semester with all of these video interviews and conversations with experts. And I've got another expert to share his thoughts with you on what it takes to be a great internal auditor, because you know me by now. I hope that you all one day decide to be internal auditors. So Eric Liggett is here with us. I'm going to let him introduce himself, his background, and whatever he wants to share with you guys. So Eric, take it away.
All right. Well, hello, everybody. I'm Eric Liggett, currently the head of internal audit for National Storage Affiliates, which is a storage unit real estate investment trust. I've been here for just over a year and have just a small team, just me and a senior auditor at the moment, but looking to hopefully grow here in the future. Just to give a little bit of my background, I graduated a long time ago with a degree in accounting. And then I grew up in Denver and moved back. I went to college in Idaho, moved back and started an internship at EKS&H, which was a large public accounting firm here that has since merged with Plant Moran. So started my career in public accounting, did kind of that traditional route, got my CPA, really love public accounting, would really recommend it as a good start just to get good skill set and documentation and working with a diverse group of people. But did that for about 5 years and realized it wasn't something I wanted to do forever. Had no interest in becoming a partner, wanted to have a family and more work-life balance. So that's when I kind of transitioned into internal audit. So I started out doing internal audit with Nordstrom for their banking arm, and did that for about 2 years, and then had an opportunity to become an accounting manager. So made a little bit of a career shift and did kind of the bookkeeping, month-end close, got a real taste of the accounting world. And I did that for about a year, and it was really great experience. It was interesting being on the other side of an audit and actually being audited, and, taught me some skills and, made me learn some lessons of, hey, this is how I could be a better auditor after experiencing the other side. So I did that. And then the kind of banking arm sold off to TD Bank from Nordstrom. And so I went to a healthcare company and was in a pretty unique role where I wasn't in internal audit, but I was the liaison between the business, internal audit, and external audit. So I did a lot of kind of second line of defense testing. I didn't have to be independent, so I could kind of, do pre-audits and kind of get issues communicated before the auditors looked into things. So it was a really unique, fun experience. And then that company got acquired. And so then I moved to UDR here in Colorado, which is another real estate investment trust for multifamily housing. So I was the head of internal audit there for about 5 years, grew the team there. And then, most recently at this position at National Storage Affiliates. So been able to have kind of a good variety of different audits, external audit, internal audit, and also just being in accounting. So I've seen kind of all angles of it. And Joe asked me to share a fun fact. So I guess the one thing about me, very passionate about music, love music, playing music, listening to music, especially live music. And I've been to over 40 concerts.
Awesome. I love it. I'm a lover of music as well. So that's
great.
Fantastic. What's your genre of music?
So I mean, I do have pretty eclectic tastes. I would say that kind of classic rock, the grunge era, and then kind of like early British punk would be kind of my three mainstays, but I'll venture into most anything.
That's awesome. It's just the experience, right? I love being amongst different people. I think people watching at concerts is the best too.
Yes.
Well,
agreed.
Thanks for sharing all that with us. And I do agree you're the perfect person to be talking about this, especially when you said you've sat on the other side and you've been audited. So don't you love, I've been in that position too. And it's almost like you learn what not to do.
Right.
How not to behave as an auditor. So let's start there. The students have gotten lots of, I'm going to put in air quotes, technical, internal audit skills throughout the semester. Tell them what you see as the softer skills. I kind of hate that term soft skills because I think that maybe puts them second to all the other stuff. And I think sometimes they're more important. So give us your opinion. If you had to pick one, what would you pick? And then we'll kind of go down the list from there.
Yeah. So for the top one, I would definitely say communication. And going back to your point about soft skills, I feel like really most of my career success has been because of soft skills. I'm not the most technical minded accountant, and I struggled on the CPA exam with derivatives and, those kinds of things. So, I wasn't known in my public accounting firm as, oh, if you have a technical question, go to Eric. But, just having a, positive can-do attitude really took me far. So, but sorry, going back to the question, organization or communication skills, both verbal and written. Some of my insights on verbal communication skills, if you're able to talk with a variety of people, blue collar, white collar, different levels of employees at an organization, different jobs, skill sets, that will take you far. If you can relate to them, find common ground with them, find common interests. One thing that some people, especially, if you're working with a lot of accountants, a lot of them have come from public accounting, have audit backgrounds, they understand what you do. If you're doing a compliance audit, operational audit, where you're getting into working with, human resources, legal, IT, they may not know what you're doing, and they may have kind of just this, adversarial relationship with you at first, just because they don't understand the purpose of the audit. They might think they're in trouble. So being able to communicate with them, ease that tension, is super important. If you can kind of advocate like, no, I'm coming in here to prove that, you're doing your job well, and attest that everything's good to go. So I think those are really great things. And one other thing, I hate to call it small talk, but mastering small talk. If you can go and just strike up a conversation, you can kind of, if you go to somebody's office or cube, you can look around and, see like, oh, they have 3 dogs. Like, you could talk about that for hours, and just kind of gleaning those insights of what is this person interested in? What are their hobbies? And, just trying to know a little bit about a lot of those things to kind of master that small talk.
I love that. One of my favorite people in the world is Deborah Fine, and she wrote the book, The Fine Art of Small Talk. And it really, and she wrote it, I'm going to guess 30 plus years ago. And she just republished kind of her first like refresh, because she hasn't needed to. Amazingly, it is this art though. And I know she's sold millions of copies of her book for that reason. It's not as easy as everybody thinks. So that's a skill that would be great to have. And honestly, while you were talking, Eric, my mind kept going to be personable, right? I mean, I think just humanizing what we do. And I think maybe I've said that before in another interview, but the word personable kept coming up in my mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Being personable, having just a good attitude. Nobody likes being audited. So yeah, if you can relate to them, and, that face-to-face interaction, I think is huge, and, I'm all for, kind of this shift of, hybrid work situations and everything. But I will say, when I've audited somebody, especially like, I'll use the example of just like requesting information, requesting, deliverables, sending just an email with, just my signature. But after I've met those people in person, they're just more responsive, and it's really helped the relationship. So trying to get some of those, face-to-face meetings and being personable that way goes a long way.
I agree. I totally agree. It's just even meeting once, right? Just going to the office and like, let's meet first in person, then we can continue this relationship online. I know with the student internal auditors in that class, that grad class that I do, that's what I suggest too. Students have busy schedules, but at least meet your clients, once or twice face to face, and then it makes the rest of the audit go so much smoother. So agree with that. So if you had to pick, second or third place, what would your next qualities of an internal auditor be? Maybe that you're looking for to hire again and expand your team one day.
Yeah. So the second one I would say is emotional intelligence. And I know there's been, books written on it and everything, but I found kind of this graphic that does a good job of, kind of explaining it. It's kind of 5 aspects. So first one is social skills. So I think that goes back a lot to communication, decision-making, being able to, make responsible choices that accept your outcome and really thinking through those. Empathy is a huge one. Being able to understand people's point of views, where they're coming from. Self-awareness is huge. I always think of just Michael Scott from The Office as, the example of kind of the antithesis of that. But just, knowing your feelings and motivations and then how you're being perceived and, just like, and from all, I think like a specific audit example, if you're going and trying to get information from accounting during month end close, like they're not going to be happy that, you're doing that. So just being aware of things, and then kind of self-regulation, being able to manage your own emotions and, a healthy way, and just kind of regulate them in a professional setting. So some great advice I got from one of my old bosses at Nordstrom was, we had kind of a interesting relationship with legal, because as part of the banking regulations, we not only had to do our own audit, but part of the regulations were we had to audit the compliance department and give an assessment of their work. And so it led to some tension sometimes. And sometimes when we have these tense meetings, I'd go talk to my boss about, how they went and what we could do better. And one piece of advice he gave me was always be the coolest person in the room. And he didn't mean, the coolest, like the hippest person, but just always be calm and collective, and don't lose your cool. Because, sometimes in those meetings, people would get overexcited, agitated. And he said, if you can remain the coolest person in your room, that will speak volumes.
Yeah, that is, what great advice. I think, I always think of the word self-control, but I like self-regulation way better. That just sounds more professional. So that's great. And emotional intelligence is definitely something that the students haven't heard yet this semester. So thanks for bringing that to the table.
Oh, good.
Anything third that you want to share? And then the last question really is, how can they practice this? How can they get better at all of these things that we're talking about?
Yeah, definitely. So I'd say the third most important one would be kind of, I'd call it like organizational / time management skills. And, just with, especially if you start out in public accounting, you're on multiple jobs, you have multiple responsibilities. So being able to juggle those, manage your time. So a couple kind of subcomponents of that. There's this book that we read called Eat the Frog. And it was about, doing the thing that's the hardest at the beginning of the day. So, if you kind of plan out your day and there's something you've been putting off, or like, I'm really dreading doing this, do that first. And it is powerful, because then your whole day just kind of opens up. It just kind of releases this burden. And then I think the other thing for just managing your time and everything is, if you have a bunch of competing priorities, just going back to communication, if you just have expectations that you've established of, hey, when is this due? And you're constantly communicating, you might have something that you think is a huge priority, but then you go talk to the person that you're delivering it to, and they're like, well, I'm not even going to look at this till next week. So, just communicating your progress and making sure that you understand expectations. That's been a huge key to my success, and, juggling multiple stakeholders, multiple priorities, and so that's been very valuable.
I love that. I read the book The Now Habit, and it was, essentially how to shift from a procrastinator to a producer. And
Okay.
I love that line, and so now I have to read this book, Eat the Frog, because I'm an avid book reader, so I'm going to check it out. Thanks for that.
Yeah, and then the second part of your question of, how can people practice this? So, I think, college is a great place with, being able to practice the organizational skills, time management. You got different courses, might have a part-time job, other things. So being able to practice that, but also I'd say, try new things and things that make you uncomfortable. Put yourself in situations where, you are stretching yourself to learn new skills. Maybe it's, attending, a lecture, or, activities on campus that maybe you're not familiar with, but it's a good way to get to meet new people, master that small talk, introduce yourself, get to know people, find ways to relate on common ground. And I'd say, trying to just get a sense of what you're naturally good at, and then see what you maybe aren't as good at, and then, make goals to try to find situations where you can expand those skills. There's a graphic you see a lot on LinkedIn and other places that's like, 10 things that require 0 talent. And I go back to that a lot, because there's things on there where it's like, yeah, even if you feel like maybe you're not the most skilled at something, like some of the examples on it's like being on time, putting in effort, body language, energy, attitude, being coachable. Those are all things that you can practice now and that don't require a skill like, technical skill, but they're all things that really help make you successful.
I love that. And we can all make a choice to really work on any of those things for fairly, low cost, if not no cost, right? I mean, it's not, you don't have to go to some fancy training. You don't really even have to buy a book. I think a lot of it goes back to self-awareness and just saying, I'm going to work on this one thing, like body language. I've got some friends that probably could use some help in that area, and I think it's just, you've got to be aware that it's a problem and work on it. So I love that. And I've got one last question, and I think you've given the students plenty of advice so far, but if you were to talk to younger Eric, is there any advice that you wish you had years ago that you'd like to share with the students?
Absolutely. So I kind of put this in two parts. So the first part would be just to really get into data and really understand your company's data, what reports management's looking at, how data is queried, and that's such a important skill set. And people that know data and can query data, you can basically, create your own position and demand a high salary. And it is so important now. And I've seen just the power of it, if you can get into like IDEA or ACL, any of those data analytics tools and get experience with those, that's going to be huge. So that was kind of like the practical advice. The other advice I would give, it's maybe more specific to me, but broader, is just to be more curious and think outside of your role and organization. Try to understand the whole company and operation, all your stakeholders, dependencies of different departments on each other, what each stakeholder values, and just how everything works. So if you're curious on that, that opens up a lot of different things. You'll be a better auditor, you'll be a better accountant. And then it also provides, if there's opportunities, if you want to see what the world's like outside of audit or accounting, and you want to go into an operations role, you'll have a great foundation. But then you also have the benefit of like, well, I understand this process. I've done a walkthrough and I was curious, I asked questions. And even if you stay in accounting or audit, if you're in some of these meetings and you can understand, how my actions affect another group, and be cognizant of that, that's always going to help as well.
Yeah, I love that. So I always like to pick out the one word I'm hearing, and it's almost like being a connector, right? We get to see so much across an organization. It's why I love internal audit. So being able to connect the dots, even between different areas that maybe should be communicating with each other that aren't, or, one area is doing something more efficiently, and we can kind of say, I think you could benefit from doing this like they do. Let's connect those, those two groups. So I love that. Great advice, Eric. Thank you so much for joining us with the students this semester. And just thanks for your time.
Yeah, thank you.